Authority Spotlight. I'm your host, Michelle Prince, founder and CEO of Performance Publishing Group, making a difference one story at a time. We'll be shining the light on successful founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders that are getting results and making a difference. We'll talk about how they built their businesses, are creating movements, and leveraging the power of authority in their own lives. Be sure to stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest. Let's get started. Everybody, and welcome to the Power of Authority Spotlight, where we shine the light on entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, and people that are doing extraordinary things. They're following their passion, they're living with purpose, and they're making a difference. And I cannot wait to introduce you to two guests today. But first, this episode is brought to you by Performance Publishing. If you've ever thought about writing a book, you can do it. It is not as hard as you think. You just got to get all of that out of your head onto paper, and we can help. Go get a free strategy call at performancepublishinggroup.com. That's performancepublishinggroup.com. Well, let me introduce you to my two guests today. First is Jennifer Harris. Jennifer is a mom, designer, entrepreneur, and recovering maximalist with over 20 years of experience designing interiors, products, and graphics. Her passion for problem solving and organization drives her to create personalized solutions that blend functionality with aesthetic appeal. She hopes her story and ideas will inspire others to reclaim the functional design of their personal real estate. And then we also have Courtney Huckabay, who is a mom, therapist, trainer, supervisor, coach, and entrepreneur. She founded and led her professional mental health group practice and has been a therapist for over 18 years, working with families, children, and parents. Her passion in life is helping people grow personally and professionally, though her first love remains her family. Jennifer, Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to have you both on because I've had the privilege of getting to see you bring this baby to life, which is your new book, which just launched here recently, called Reframe and Reclaim. But tell everyone a little bit more about the book and how it came to be.
Yeah, so the origin story of Reframe and Reclaim really started about 3 years ago in the fall of 2021, when I started noticing patterns within my own family and how our relationship with our belongings. And I noticed these patterns were generational. So from my grandparents to my mom. And for my family, so my history is I have a lot of sentimentality when it comes to belongings. So both my grandfathers passed away when I was 9 years old. My father passed away when I was 15. And so for me, this book really started as evaluating my sentimentality around these items and how I put so much emphasis on these sentimental items around my loved ones who had passed away. So that started me thinking, and I reached out to Courtney, who's a mental health professional. And we just started having conversations about why do I do these things, or people in general, why they do these things and why they have these self-identity and this emphasis on their belongings. Mm-hmm. And so we had these conversations and it kind of morphed into, hey, you want to write a book? Like, I think this could be really helpful for people. So the way the book is formatted is it starts out with me sharing my personal journey and my stories about how I've used certain excuses or how I have not let go of items that I really don't need anymore. They're not serving a purpose in my home. Some are even negative feelings. I keep the item, but it has a real negative connotation to it. So why am I keeping these items? So this book is really the story of my journey and journey of other clients we have helped, and how we're able to let go of items that aren't serving us in our current life chapter.
I think this is huge because so many people, and I can relate. I'll tell you more of my stories but I totally get it. And you don't want to throw away something, especially if somebody's passed away. But what is the psychology behind that? Courtney, why do we do this? Why do we hold on?
Well, there is so much behind this. And so, it's not a simple, oh, this is why, and so really we learn a lot about how we do life and about our identities how we connect with others through what we see other people doing. And so, one of the things that Jennifer and I really found is it's really generational for her. There was a lot of, well, my mom kept things and my grandfather kept things. And so I just know that you keep things. But we actually go through many different excuses or justifications of why we hold on to things or why we acquire things in the book. And it's laid out like that in the chapters. And so there's different justifications, and each justification is highlighted by each chapter.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned the word generations, and I'm curious if there's any connection to my grandmother was came in the World War II, kind of or actually she was in the Great Depression. And
Yeah.
I remember as a little girl, she would even save and reuse paper towels. And this
Mm-hmm.
was long after they had plenty of money,
Right.
but so is that maybe what some of this generational, like they didn't have anything, so they kept everything. And then the next generation is like, well, if my mom kept it, maybe we should keep it. And then it just goes on and on and on.
Well, that is,
Exactly.
yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
definitely a part of that. And I think what's so hard is, we also create habits in our life, so maybe my habit is I collect these things, or, I try to find things that are valuable or keep things that could be worth value. And I keep that habit until it doesn't serve me anymore, or I realize it's not really helpful for me. So we really do try to explore and unpack lots of different psychologies around our identities and our habits and our connections with our things.
One of the things I really love about the book is you have a collection of case studies, and to really paint the picture of what this really looks like. Do you mind sharing a couple of those, or give us some ideas of what's really going on with
Yes.
people?
So, like Jen said, a lot of it starts with her own like history and sharing her story, and then we try to find people who would be willing to let us try some of our ideas with our reclaim process.
Mhm.
We have a 7-step process that we've identified, we've formulated, and we thought this would be really good. And so we asked for volunteers to open up their homes and let us come in and step in. And being a counselor, a little bit about my theory of working with people is not to say, this is how you got to do it. Let me show you I'm the expert, but really having it client led. And what's different about this book and some other books that might be out there is we don't come in and do for the person. We actually have them tell us what they need. And so we go through the seven steps, and we ask them the questions along the way, and trying to find out what they hope their function of their design, of their space, what is one of the challenges that they're facing when it comes to their space. And we actually let them make the decisions as we decide one thing versus another. Is this a keep, or is this a donate, or is this a give to somebody else who might be wanting this or conserve them as well?
Okay. I would love for you to take us through those seven, and so people can write them down too. So, and I know you
Yes.
kind of touched on it, but just what is number one?
Number one is reflect.
Okay.
We want to make sure that they're reflecting on how the space is currently used, what is in their space, how their space feels when they're in their space.
Okay.
We also wanted them to ask like what they want their space to be
Okay.
as well. So it may be one way, and what is the hope that they want at the end.
Okay. So reflect, stop, really evaluate basically what you want. What's number two?
Well, that leads us into E, which is evaluate. So,
Okay. I'm sorry. So I said 7 step, but it is the acronym.
It
yes,
is
Okay. So
reclaim. Yes.
reclaim. Right. So R is reflect. E is
evaluate.
evaluate.
And so the evaluate step really is getting to the root of why you are holding on to this item and what it's giving you. And so how it's like Courtney was saying, how it's broken up in the book is by the different excuses we tell ourselves. And so someone who keeps something because it's sentimental versus someone who's keeping an item because it's, might be worth something someday, Or, I might use it one day because the whole Great Depression mentality we're going to ask different questions based on those excuses so that we can really get to the root of the problem.
Love that. So ease, evaluate, and what's next?
So after we do that, we're going to make sure that we clean and clear out the space.
Okay.
So it's really hard to see how the space can be without how everything already is. And that's really just like taking everything out, clearing out the space, and seeing it for what it could be, and really letting your mind get creative and evaluating what you would like it to be.
I like that. Okay. Clean and
And
clear.
also thinking about how you feel when it's clean and empty, because
Mhm.
you may look at it and be like, oh, I didn't know it could feel this way. I really don't want to put all this stuff back into it because I feel good seeing it
Right.
empty.
This is so fascinating to me. It is. It's just the connection between the two. So anyway, we'll keep going because I know everyone wants to continue to what they are. So what is L?
So L is layout. And so this is before you put the room back together, really thinking about the things that you reflected on in the evaluate process, or evaluate step, I should say, is what you want to put back in and how this room needs to function for yourself. So whether it's sketching out, like this is where I want furniture to go, or in my pantry, snacks are what I always go to. So I need that at eye level so I can grab it quickly and put the heavier items down low,
Yeah.
thinking about the functionality of it for your everyday use,
Okay.
laying it out to that specification.
Mhm.
And then will you go into the next?
Okay. And then we go into A.
Next, we go into A, which
So
is
as we create like a blueprint, it might be a sketch, it might be like, measuring off and putting some things to show where things would go. We actually start to assemble and we say, what is priority? What is something that if this is to function and feel as you had imagined, what has to go back in? And we start there. And we start to assemble and see, okay, how does this feel? Now you see this in the space. Now that you have this in the space, do we need to adjust anything and as we're putting it back into the actual physical space?
So good. So good. All right. And then our
that leads into I. So the I in reclaim is inspect. And this is really important. It's a step that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration and really give it enough value. You want to take a step back, look at the space and say, is this really going to function how I want it to? And it's okay if it doesn't. So if you take a step back and you're like, I really need this item more eye level, or this item really should go in another room so I can fit the things I need in this space here. That's where you do that in this step and just take that final gut check to make sure it's going to function how you want.
okay. So smart. Yes. And then the final, what's M?
So M is the hardest and the longest step of the process, and this is maintain. So a lot of times we take a few hours, a couple of days, and we create a space, and then we live in the space and we use the space. And this is where a lot of times the space no longer is functioning the way we started or intended. So this is really looking at what steps do I need to take? Who do I need to also bring into this and
Right.
create expectations for this space so that it does continue to function and feel the way it does right now?
Oh, wow. How did you two come up with this? I know you talked in the book and I had a little bit of a, insider view on this, but really how did you come up with that framework? It's really it's not just clever, but it's very functional and it makes a ton of sense to me.
Yes. Well, it was really looking at, I feel like people, whenever this is going to be a generalization, but when people look at design shows or organizational shows, or when they want to go and organize something, they think it's one and done. It's like, I'm going to buy these bins, I'm going to put it in here, it's going to be beautiful, and I never have to touch it again.
Yeah.
But life's not like that, right? Our life changes. I mean, if I say, like, if I could know which snack my kid is going to have as their favorite, from week to week, that would be a huge help. But if
Right.
they want something that's 2 inches wide compared to 1 inch wide, that's going to vary my space in my pantry, right? And so being able to be flexible and understand that you will have to come back to it and make it work for you is a really important step. And I think, about 70 to 80% of a system will continue to work, but we need to have the about 20% that stays flexible for just changing lifestyles.
Very good. So
Yeah. And
go ahead.
well, and I was going to mention with that too is the maintaining is not that this space has to continue to function this way. And that's the coming back to reflecting again. If, the kids are in diapers and now the kids aren't in diapers, or the kids like this snack and don't like this snack, or I have an office, now I don't need a home office, or I have this hobby and now I don't have that hobby, we can really coming back to this again the next year or 3 years from now, and it's something that is always evolving, and a living process is what it really is.
So the people that you who volunteered, you went into their homes. Give me an example of what happened as you took them through this 7-step process.
Want me to take that, Jen, or do you want to
take that, Courtney?
Okay. So we all as we were writing this book, some of our friends and family knew about it. We talked to some other people who might be interested, and we just asked, "Hey, we're writing a book. Would you be comfortable for us coming in?" One of our clients, out of necessity, she's like, "I'm moving. I have this space, and I've got to figure out what to do with all this stuff. I haven't seen this stuff in years. I don't want to do this, but I know if you're offering help, I need help." And so we actually started the day and did some, pre-interview, which is in the book as well. And how are you feeling? What are your hopes for this time? What's kept you from not starting this process before? What are some of the obstacles for you? And really just getting to know the client, where they're at. And reassuring that we're not here to force you to get rid of things or to throw things away. Really, we just want to help you find better function. And this client was telling us she had avoided this space for over 6 years because she just knew it was going to take too much time and too much effort. And by the end of the day, we finished everything in one day. She had donated more than a car full of things. She was so thankful that we went through this. She was excited about her move because she was moving. She felt like she had found things that she didn't know she had lost or misplaced. And she found things that she realized, I don't know why I was keeping this. Like, what was I thinking? So there is a lot of change in 6 years for this client. And our hope for this book is not to become minimalist. It's just really finding what functions and what feels good for you.
I love that, because it's not just about functionality. It is also about the feeling part of it. And if it really means something to you,
right,
it brings you joy, and and not, then keep it and find a place for it. But let me ask you, I'm going to give you a scenario, and you tell me if how you would approach this. So let's just use the moving example again, right? So somebody is moving and they've pulled out all the things, like let's just say the attic or the storage shed or whatever, and they realize that they have all of the pictures and all of the memorabilia of somebody who has passed, mom, dad, grandma, whoever it is. What do you do with that stuff? It's from this generation. They can't use it, but there's this guilt tied to, but I can't throw it away. It was mom.
Yes. So I have become an expert in this area because this is what I
tell me
a lot, right? So for me, I had to really look at what do I value, and it wasn't like I had to look at it as like very almost existential. Like, if my house burned down and I lost everything, what do I truly value? What do I want? And what would I be heartbroken if I lost? And so it was really the family photos.
Yes.
And I thought about it though, and I was like, well, all my family photos are stored in boxes and albums, like at the bottom of my entertainment center. And if there was a fire, could I easily go grab those? Could I save those? Is it in a place where if I truly value it, I can get it? And so for me, I took a step back and I digitized all my really important photos. It was a process and took some time, but I was able to digitize the photos. Any objects that were really sentimental to me, I took photos of. I bought a light box. Courtney was there. We have it on video.
We had a weekend of it.
Yes. And, I just talked through the items and why this is important and why I wanted to keep it. So I was able to take photos of it and then I could easily let it go.
Mm.
And, if I'm honest with myself, am I going to go back and look at some of these sentimental items like my childhood toys? Maybe not, probably not. But for me, it's stored on an external hard drive that I keep in my fireproof and waterproof safe. So I know it's safe and I can go access that whenever I want to and whenever I want to, revisit those memories.
Wow, that is awesome advice. And I have to tell you, selfishly, I asked the question because we are getting ready to move and we cleaned out a storage shed. And it has, and my husband's mother has passed, his grandmother, his grandfather, and a great uncle that we took care of, up until their last days. And so to have all of this important stuff that was so important in their lives, and yet it's nothing that we access or do anything, but that feeling, the guilt, that there is a
Yes.
psychological, right?
Well, we can't get rid of it, right? And so I feel like you've just, first of all, kind of released me from this, like there is an answer. And
Yeah.
in all the years we've lived in this house, they were in a storage unit. Like never once did we go through them. So that is actually great, great, great advice. Digitize the pictures, take pictures of something.
Yes. And something else that I dealt with is I have a 3-car garage. So I have lots of storage space.
Yeah.
But if I'm storing something out in, Texas summers, and if it's 110, 120 degrees, is it going to be preserved? Am I really valuing this item if I'm storing it in this heated garage? Right? Like it's
Even
just
our attics are that.
Yes.
Right. Right. And I think it's so important. Like there's not a one answer. And so if you come across, a grandparent's something special or an item that belonged to them, it's okay to say, I'm not ready to let this go now.
Yeah.
But are there other things that I feel comfortable with? And so this isn't a one stop. Sometimes it is, I need time or I need to talk to other family members. Or I heard a lot of people say, I just don't want it to be wasted. I don't want it to be forgotten. And so finding like an organization that can use those things or an organization that can repurpose it, or finding a family member that would have a space inside their home to display or to use one of those family heirlooms. I think that has been a key, is like not wanting people and their legacy to be forgotten, but we're not really honoring them by keeping all of their things in a storage unit. But that's what we feel like we need to do. But what is going to be more honoring to them?
And I'll say,
oh, go ahead, please, Jennifer.
I was just going to say another example, one of our client case studies, it was, there was a curio cabinet where she kept all of these things that were passed down to her from her parents and from her loved ones.
Yes.
But it's kind of that old saying, if you value everything, you don't value anything. And so all of the really important pieces were hiding behind other items that were also given, but that just didn't hold the same value. So by being able to edit out those items that had a lower value, we were able to really highlight and accentuate those really joy-filled sentimental items that she will see every time she walks in her home.
And I heard you say earlier, so once you've determined that, okay, maybe I'm not keeping it, or maybe, but that you said there's 3 really like buckets, if you will. Is it the donate?
Yeah, there's
save or give away. What was that? What was it?
Well, we have, there's always trash, unfortunately.
Okay.
But there's trash, there's donate, there's keep. And then sometimes we have a maybe pile where it's like, I'm not quite sure. And again, going back to the assemble, inspect process, it's like, oh, I do have space for one more item. I could put this in, or, oh, I need to take this other item out. So,
Right. And I think that, I'm actually one of the case studies. Again, this is not just a Jennifer storytelling, we all, I think you too, Michelle, have found like a place of how this might help or fit in their lives. But for me, I had these dolls that were passed down to me by my grandmother, who has also passed, and a very important person to me, one of my closest relationships I've had in life. But I was told not to play with these dolls because they were too valuable. So for 30 plus years, they were stored inside my home, not in the Texas heat, in my closet, in a box. and they just sat there. So what I did instead is I contacted family and I said, these were grandmothers. Does anybody want these? I want her to be remembered. They were important for her, but I'm not appreciating in how she wanted me to. And I want somebody to display them, use them. And I was able to gift them to two of my family members so that they could keep those things that were hers and honor her, and me feel comfortable with that.
I feel like this book is going to release a lot of that guilt and also little shame maybe of like, well, why is my house cluttered? And,
Right.
because like for you both to have gone through and deal with this, and me too, I think it's so many people struggle with this, but it's just one of those things like you don't talk about it. It's just like, well, it just goes to the next house and then to the next house and to the next house. So yeah. I think you're releasing people from a lot of that. And I think what you're doing is, and no pun intended, but you're really helping them to reclaim, their space and what matters to them and what brings them joy and fulfillment and all those things. So,
and it starts with the reframing of how do I value this? And is it important to me? And do I value it for what reasons? And claiming the space, reclaiming the space in the function. Because sometimes I'm like, I have to keep this because it was, so and so's, or it was gifted to me. I got a display, and it doesn't really fit the function or the aesthetic you want. So working on that mental and emotional piece is really important in our book.
Yes.
So I know people listening are going to want to, first of all, they're going to want to get the book, and they're also going to want to get in touch with you. So what is some of the best ways that they can do both?
Well, they can follow us on Instagram at reframe_reclaim, where we show a lot of what we're doing and tips and tricks. We also have our Facebook page at reframe_reclaim. And then our website is reframe-reclaim, where they can go and pick up our book. And there's links to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and other booksellers that they can get to.
Yeah, and I highly recommend those listening definitely go get it. It's a great book. It's an easy read, and I think it's something that could make a huge impact in people's lives and homes. And
yes,
and but
that's our hope. That's our hope. Yes.
Ladies, thank you so much for being on the show. I just adore both of you, and I'm so excited for this journey. And this is just the beginning for what you're going to do to help people.
Well, we want to thank you and Performance Publishing. It has really been a joy and a relief to work with somebody who would guide us through all of the publishing process, because it does feel overwhelming when you haven't written a book before. So I just want to say thank you to all of your team. It's been a really, really wonderful pleasure.
Oh, yes. Thanks for helping us tell our story.
You are so welcome. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. And so I just want to make sure for those of you who are listening, and if you didn't have a pen earlier, I'm going to have, and you have it now, what are those steps? So again, it's all about, you got to reclaim or reframe and then reclaim. But what are those 7 steps that Jennifer and Courtney shared? Is number 1 is the R in reclaim is reflect, right? Really taking in what do I really want? What do I envision? All of that has to happen before you can do anything else, because then you go to E, which is evaluate. Get to the root of why are you holding on to some things? Why is it in your home? Is it important to you, or is it an obligation? Then we go to C, which is you got to clean and clear out, right? I love that, because until you can't just move things around. You really have to get rid of it all and then determine what you want back in, which is where the L comes in. How do you want it laid out? How is it going to be functional for you? And that's super, super important to think through in this whole process. Then we move into A, which stands for assemble, and really thinking back, what is the priority? What has to go back in? What doesn't need to go back in? That's all part of the assemble stage. Then we go into inspect, which is, does it function for me? Does it really work the way I want it to in my everyday life? And then finally, the M in reclaim is maintain, because and part of that also goes back to the beginning of reflect, because something may work today that may not work 6 months from now. So you have to maintain it, but then go back, reflect, just to make sure, does it still work for you? So I highly recommend, again, you get this book and go to their website at reframe-reclaim.com. And I just want to thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Power of Authority podcast. Bye now. Thanks so so much for listening to the Power of Authority Spotlight. If you are a successful founder, entrepreneur, business owner, or leader that's getting results and making a difference, and you'd like to be on this program, please visit performancepublishinggroup.com/podcast to apply. That's performancepublishinggroup.com/podcast. Also, if you got something out of this interview, please share this episode. Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag, The Power of Authority Spotlight. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content, so make sure you don't miss any episodes by subscribing. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our websites, performancepublishinggroup.com or michelleprince.com, and follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.